Good morning. Welcome to our, what are we calling it? Historical weapons introductions. Little pre-summer series looking at a few of the historical weapons that we've trained with in the past and just kind of working on some foundations and some basic structures with those. So today we're going to be looking at the double-edged sword, but let's give our shoulders and arms and wrists a bit of a warm-up before we put the weapon in hand. So shoulders can go back. And shoulders can go forward. Arms circle back one way and the other. We're going to reach and lean to one side and to the other. And again on that first side and the second. Let's let the trunk warm up, but the shoulders just kind of go loose and arms flop around a little. And then we can cradle one arm, bring it across. And same on the other side. We're going to go over the head and pull. And same on the other side. Let's go behind the back and pull. And same on the other side. Let's warm up the wrists a little bit. We'll circle them around one way. And around the other. Good. Now we can shake things out. And let's grab up a weapon. So, what are we working on today? So today we're looking at the straight sword, the double-edged sword. Depending on translation, we'll get Gim or Jian. And so not like the European double-edged sword. This isn't a heavy bashing style sword. It's considered to be light. It's supposed to be fast. It was often considered to be sort of a call a status symbol or a symbol of the intelligent fighter because it takes some skill to use. So unlike the saber that we were looking at with the Tai Chi set over the last 6 months or so, the double-edged sword does do cutting, does do it, but it's not the same kind of chopping, cutting tool as the saber. And the saber is considered to be a bit more of an easier weapon to learn and quite often was used a lot for civilian self-defense and things of that sort as well. So what do we have? We've got a tapered double-edged sword, pointy end. So this is telling us that there's going to be a lot of potential for thrusting with this weapon because of the shape of it and the length that we have for thrusting. But like all bladed weapons, we end up using very similar patterns in the way we do this. So you can pick up a stick and use a similar patterns to what you would for our double-edged sword. So let's go through a few things to start out with. One of them that often people don't think about when they are picking up and thinking about sort of working with weapons is that our grip wants to be able to be sort of flexible, but what we're looking for is a little bit of a wrap with our middle finger so that we can get a sense of pulling or pulling. So we're kind of rocking around that wrapped finger position. So a lot of the time we'll be releasing and making things happen, but we won't release here. So you don't want your thumb up on the sides. You don't want a grip that allows for an open position here, because one of the things in weapons training that we want to remember is the other person will typically want to get that out of your hand so you can't poke them or cut them with it. So if we have loose grips that we're kind of, sort of sandwiching between our fingers, or we've got odd positions, thumbs up on top of grips and stuff like that, where cuts can happen, it's a lot easier to remove that weapon from your hand. The next thing we want to keep in mind when we're talking about edged weapons, and difficult to profile and show you edges on the screen, but we want to try to make sure that our edge and our cutting direction, pardon me, will blend together, will be the same. So if I'm making a cut and my edges turn slightly, I'm actually slapping with the side of the blade as opposed to cutting with the edge of the blade. So a lot of work needs to be done to make sure that when you're cutting, you're not turning your wrist one way or turning your wrist the other way, which means you're going to deflect off or wrap, or even with a weapon like this, you might bend the weapon because its strength is not in the flats. Its strength is because of the profiles of the weapon to the edge, and that's where its strength is for striking and making contact. And if we hit things on the side or we scallop into our cuts, we can actually end up bending the blade while we're working on that. Okay, so let's start out like we do with most of our weapons work. We're going to work on both arms because it's fun to kind of, instead of doing light dumbbell weight, you can take a weapon in your hand and kind of do some light weights work with this. So our first angles are going to be our downwards diagonal cutting patterns. And cutting is not percussive entirely. Cutting is the idea of touching and drawing an edge across. So we don't want to think about just kind of slamming the weapon into place. We want to think about touching and then pulling that across the cut. So we hit and we pull at the same time. So let's try some downwards diagonals. So 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is going from shoulder to hip. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Let's do one more set of those. 1, 2. So diagonal, diagonal, shoulder to hip. Now I've got a blade that's designed to kind of let me know if my edges are lined up properly, and it gives an audio feedback if my edges are in alignment. Last couple. So let's switch that over to the opposite hand. This is going to feel really awkward to work your non-dominant hand, but if we're looking at this as a way of doing exercise and working on the body, working on one hand or the other helps a lot with right and left hemisphere connections and things of that sort as well. So downwards diagonal, we've got that grip. We want the edge angle to match our cut angle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so the main cutting directions for almost all edge weapon and percussive weapons for the most part is we have our X for our diagonals. So now we did the downwards X. Now we want to think about doing the rising one. So we're going to come up from the hip. We're going to reach out. We're going to pull our cut back. We're going to reach out to touch and pull the cut. 1, 2, 3. And now what a lot of people end up doing is what I call sweeping the floor, where they're kind of swinging the weapon in front of them, but we want to reach into that space. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Good. Let's take that to the non-dominant hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Good. So there's our major diagonals, down and up for cutting, and we're continuing the cuts. We're hitting and we're pulling. Now, quite often you'll see when people are doing Chinese-based double-edged sword work that their opposite hand, without the sword, will be shaped into what's called the sword hand. Now, there's a few reasons for that. Some of it's stylistic. Some of it's also about making sure that your mind doesn't lose track of your other hand. So sometimes be placing that hand connected to the body or to the wrist, and sometimes we'll have that hand away. But we don't want to lose track of where our opposite hand is when the other person has an edged weapon, because that could be losing that hand. Okay, so let's talk about in the 8 directions. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we've got cross and back here. So we're coming 1, turn over, and 2. So we got horizontals, across and back. So again, getting that edge angled, we want to close the chest round the back, turn the waist. Now we're going to have to turn over so we come back with the edge facing out. So 1, 2, 3. Now we could go for different heights for this. This could be throat height, it can be belly height. This could be across and lower. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Let's take that to the non-dominant arm. So across is over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nice. Then we have verticals. Down, up, horizontals, verticals. Let's just do a couple of the verticals today. Down that straight line, wrap around, down again. So this is where when we get to the back part of the stroke, because a lot of what we end up having to do is recover. If I'm making a big cut, I don't want the blade to take me away. So when I cut down, I'm going to open up the wrist, drop the elbow. And here's where I was talking about that idea of pulling, where I'm kind of pulling with the fingers to help cut down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now we can also bring that across the body and get our downwards by crossing over. So first one was on the same as the sword arm, and the second one I'm crossing over on that. Let's try some of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, if we're going to strengthen up both sides of the body, let's do our same side non-dominant arm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll switch that around. 1, 2. Doesn't take long if you're working with something with some weight before you can feel this building up in the shoulders. 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. So that gets us our major 8 directions. So when you think about 8 directions, think of like an asterisk in front of you. So we've got 1 plane, 2 plane, 3, 4, and those kind of give you your angles for all those directions for your cuts. Okay, now we can work on the wrist and strengthening the wrist by using sword. So in this case, we're going to roll in the wrist. We'll just take one side of the body for now. So just to the outside, we're going to go 1, 2, and these kind of end up being chops. Boom. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But then we can take it on the inside. So we drop the wrist. 1, 2. So these are on our vertical plane. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We could get both of those. So we could work our wrist on both sides, which helps to build forearm strength and the ability to kind of control the weight of the weapon. Good. Let's not take that to the non-dominant side for now, just because I know time is going to disappear, but at any time you could work that sequence on the inside, you could work that sequence on the outside, you could take it from side to side, and you could also reverse those and start to work them up from underneath. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some deflections today. So those same angles that we have in our rising cuts, if we start to think about using, so the sword edge, it's going to be hard to show online here, but the sword edge is beveled. So it's got a high peak to the middle and it chamfers down. And that gets used to kind of help deflect things and move things off, as well as give some strength to the weapon itself. So what we're going to think about here is, instead of cutting somebody, what I'm going to think about is deflecting on that angle. So I knock. So imagine someone's thrusting towards you and you deflect over your shoulder. Nice. Now we can do this here, where we turn the wrist outwards, or the palm outwards, and we can deflect on the other side. So I go deflect one, and then I can think two, deflect one, two. So here I'm kind of making what you might call high walls. I'm deflecting something over on one side or the other. So I'm using this circuit to deflect. Bing, bing, it can feel, think about ka-ching, you're knocking something one way, or you're knocking side. And if we think about it, because Gim likes to be continuous, I go deflect, and then my next one could be my cut. I could go deflect over here, and there's my rising cut. So I'm deflecting and maybe cutting. I'm deflecting and cut. Let's try that a little bit on the other arm. So I'm deflecting, cutting underneath. I'm deflecting and cutting. Something's coming towards me. Ooh, knock it out of the way. Deflect, return with a cut. Something's coming in. I'm using that palm. Now I could deflect with the back of my hand. We'll get there in a second. But here's my deflecting arc. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Nice. Now, let's go to a low wall pattern. So now I'm going to go deflect. I'm kind of knocking something out to the side. Then I might come back and chop. I can turn my palm here and I could knock something to the side and come back and cut. Deflect, deflect. So I can make a pattern again out of this, getting my body comfortable with it. One side, other side. One side, other side. Or I could do a drill. I go deflect, deflect, cut. Deflect, deflect, cut. I could change those up. I could go deflect, deflect, diagonal. Deflect, deflect, vertical. Deflect, deflect. Maybe I come in on that horizontal. But I'm getting this idea of knocking something off to the side. So someone's thrusting. If we think about last week's spear, where that spear was continuously driving towards our legs, we could be knocking the spear to one side. We could be knocking the spear to the other side. Let's talk about a deflection without big arcs. So let's say we've got a bit of a guard position, where we've got the sword up in the front. We've got the angle slightly forward to get our distancing. And from here, what we're going to think about is turning the wrists. The wrist one way. There's my deflection. Now I can also just shift my body the other way. So I can go out to the side, or I can curve my wrist, or like the other exercise, I can get it where I turn the palm and deflect. So I'm deflecting out, or I'm deflecting to the side. And I'm still kind of keeping my center and my tip towards center for all that potential thrust techniques that come out of here. So here I'm deflecting one way, or I'm turning it out, or I can just slip back. So something comes towards me and I just take this outside edge and just move it off to the side, brush something off to the side, off to the side, off to the side. So we got low, low, we've got high, high, we've got quick shifts from side to side. Okay, time is going to go by. There's lots to think about with this weapon. So let's go to some of the main thrusting techniques that come from that. So let's go to a nice sort of deflection. Let's take one of our main deflections. So this one where we're just keeping the sword right where it is. We're deflecting something off to the side a little bit. Boom. And what we're going to do is we're going to push forward, sit back, push forward, sit back. So here's that opposite hand. It's behind the guard. It's out of the situation. It's behind the guard. It's out of the situation. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's do another one. Let's do this curved inside crossbody deflection, and then we'll do a flat thrust. Boom. So last one was edge up. This one is edge sideways. So we're going deflect, thrust, deflect, thrust, deflect, thrust, deflect, thrust out. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm taking it across my body. I'm thrusting back out. Across the body, thrust out. 9, 10. That can be off of either leg. Okay, now let's switch up for a second. Give that hand a momentary break. We're not going to do any more non-dominant for now because we only have like 5 minutes left and I got like 10 more things I want to work on. So there's lots of different ways we can thrust. We can be coming up from underneath. So you can be driving the tip of the blade up. You could be coming over and down. So we've got these flat thrusts. We've got these vertical thrusts. We've got overhead. We've got rising up from underneath. But what I want to finish the last little bit on is kind of some fun work, but also very connected to this weapon. So it's considered to be 3 main pivot points to the weapon: around the wrist and handle, around the middle of the blade, and around the tip of the blade. We already did something that was rotating around the handle. This kind of work we did here, our rotation point around the handle and the grip. Now, what we want to start to get is how we can rotate around the middle of the sword. So we're just going to do a basic exercise here where sword tip is down, and I want to think about the middle of the weapon, and I'm rotating around the middle point of the weapon. And this is sometimes how we can go from having the sword up, a lot like we did with the spear. Remember with the spear, we raised the hand and the tip went down, and we dropped the hand and the tip went up. So here I could go deflect, press back down, deflect, and I'm rotating around that middle part of the blade. And I could even go and rotate the opposite side. So I can get these rotations around the center of my blade. Now I could also rotate the center of the blade so that the tip is kind of moving through an arc. So sometimes when we're doing low cuts and things like that, we're rotating around the center of that blade and then cutting. We're rotating around the center of the blade and cutting. So we want to get this feeling that we could move around that center point. So if I worked from my wrist, my tip of the sword would be moving, but the hand staying fairly still. And now as I get to the middle of the blade, handle and tip are kind of working opposite to each other. One goes down, one goes up. You kind of have to really focus on being consistent with that central part. And this is often, like I say, used to kind of tap things out of the way, to deflect things with that sword. Okay, so if I move from the handle, right, I could circle the tip of the blade and the hand stays still. Circle one way, circle the other. If I come from the middle, tip and handle changing. But the hardest one to get is the tip of the blade being the still point and the hand moving around. So now you'll notice, oh, so hard to show with this. Tip stays still. And one of the first ways to work on this is handle moves, tip stays in place. Up, down. Hard to keep that tip all in one place as you raise and settle. Raise and settle. So handle, tip moves, center, both handle and the tip move. Tip rotation point, hand and handle are moving. Tip is staying still. So I can now try to get an arc all the way around to one side and all the way, but that tip is staying as fairly level throughout this. Down and around and up. So we've got this kind of motion. And then there's a really great drill where we learn how to keep the tip in place, and we can move the hand on the horizontal plane, on the vertical plane, and we can link the horizontal and the vertical and try, oh, it's been a while since I've done this, try to get the tip to stay still as the handle moves around. These are exercises for what they call creating sword presence, how to get your energy and your structure from the body out into the sword. And keeping that tip in place can really kind of make that a difficult exercise. And we can turn the circle both directions. So I could turn one way, try to keep that tip mostly in place, and I could turn the other way. And this is where they get the stories of the flying swords, because people who do this well can really make it look like the sword is kind of floating and flying in place as we move the rest of the weapon around it. Okay, unfortunately, time has disappeared on us, but that gives us a bunch of things to work on. You can grab a piece of doweling to work this, a little bit of broom handle, a meter stick can do a lot of this work. So let's do a quick review. We had our downwards diagonals. We had our rising diagonals. We had our horizontals at various levels. We had our verticals, same side of the body or crossed over. There's a lot more to this. There's the straight thrusts, edge up. There was the straight thrusts, edge horizontal. We also talked about a little bit about overhand thrusting and rising. There's all sorts of different ways to thrust with this weapon. We have our chops where we're kind of hitting and returning, or hitting and coming back. Then we talked about our walls, deflecting on one side, deflecting on the other, continuous deflections from one side to the other. We had our low wall, one side or the other, where we're deflecting it. And then we talked about our pivot points around the handle. So I can make these circuits around the handle or around the handle. Sometimes we're deflecting by knocking things away. We had our middle point where we're rolling through that middle, and then we tried to get to that place where the tip of the sword stays still as I work the handle. And that keeps me with my tip of the sword in place towards the opponent, while I can deflect up or press down. Lots of different things to play with. But unfortunately, we got to let it go. Next week, one of the more interesting weapons, we're going to be looking at the fighting fan and learning some technique about that next week. Thanks for joining today. We'll talk to you all very soon.